Like, are you talking about something like this?
Well, I haven't gotten to the actual doing them yet.
Okay, but you will get to them.
Right.
Okay.
I'm just trying to have a clear understanding of how it would go,
Okay.
basically.
And thanks, Alexandria, for the chat. Thanks for being here. We'll just keep talking about different equations and inequalities then. So inequalities actually act a lot like equations. They're very, very similar. You're going to do the same steps. The only difference is really what they mean. When you solve an equation, you find one answer. When you solve an inequality, you find a group of answers. So when you solve an equality, you actually do the exact same thing. You put a line where you normally put a line for the equation, and you do opposites.
Mm-hmm.
So what opposite should we do?
For minus, I'm sorry.
Good.
That's plus sign, right? 3x.
Plus 1, yep, 3x
Okay.
plus 1 greater than 15. So minus, because that's the opposite of plus. So then what's our last? This was the tricky step.
3 times.
Mm-hmm.
It would be 14.
Well, so this is 3 multiplied by x, and 15 minus 1 give you the 14. So now what opposite do we do to get x completely alone?
3.
We divide by the
Right.
3.
It becomes x. Then 14 divided by 3. 4.6.
I'm going to clear my calculator. I don't know if... Okay, yeah. Sometimes if you don't clear your calculator, it keeps some of the old stuff, so I got a different answer at first. And if we're rounding to the nearest tenth, what would this actually round to be? Are we going to write 4.6, or should it go up to
4.7.
4.7?
Because that would be because it's higher than 5, correct?
Correct. The 6 next to it, bigger than 5. So this is your solution. And again, all the steps were the same. We did all the equation stuff. The difference is when it's equals, we'd say 4.7 is the only answer. When we say greater than, that's a whole group of numbers. 5 is bigger than 4.7, or 2 million is bigger than 4.7. It's literally every number bigger than 4.7.
Okay.
So sometimes instead of just having the expression here, sometimes you might also ask to be fine to put it on a number line.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I'm actually working on now.
Okay.
So it's good that you're about to explain it.
So on the number line, it's just trying to give a visual representation of what that means.
Mm-hmm.
All the numbers bigger than 4.7, well, we put a dot at 4.7, which in this case is going to be kind of in between. And we have to decide, do we use an open or a closed dot? That's going to be one of the questions it asks is, should this be an open dot or closed dot?
No, I'm confused.
Again, it's all about what it means.
Okay.
So an open dot means the number is actually not part of that group of answers. And closed means the number itself is actually a part of that group of answers. So if this expression says x greater than 4.7, it must be bigger than 4.7. Is 4.7 actually part of that group?
No.
No. It said all the numbers bigger. It didn't say bigger than or equal to. It just said bigger. We don't actually include 4.7. So that means our open circle is when you have a less than or a greater than symbol. Those are not inclusive of the number itself. Versus closed circle will be when we do have the equal to. Less than or equal to, or greater than or equal to.
So you actually need the closed dot when you have when when the greater or lesser sign is underlined.
Yep, yep. So if
Okay.
this whole problem had the bar underneath, we'd fill in the dot. Since it didn't include the bar underneath, we don't fill in the dot.
Okay.
Okay. So then the second question is our shading. We're trying to, again, represent that whole group of numbers. So we want to shade to the right or to the left. So if we're doing bigger than, we want all the numbers above 4.7, which direction should we shade?
To the right.
To the right. Bigger than on the number line is everything to the right. So that's always true. Greater than or equal to, say to the right, and less than or equal to, say to the left. So each symbol tells you two things. Greater than told us open dot and shade to the right. If the symbol was less than or equal to, what would it tell us? Should we have open or closed, and should we shade right or left for less than or equal to?
Left.
Shade left. How about the open or closed?
Closed. I
Closed.
think.
Yep. So that would just mean we fill it in. Okay. So let's practice one more. So again, it looks different than an equation, but most of the steps are exactly the same. We're still going to split it into the two sides and do our opposites. So what should our first opposite be?
Make it greater than. I mean lesser than.
Um, that's the opposite of a greater than symbol. That is true, but our goal in choosing opposites is to get x by itself. What opposite of the numbers can we do to get x alone? Kind of like on this problem, we said, well, the opposite of adding one is minusing one.
Right.
Chose that opposite, did it on the other side. What opposite do we choose on this problem?
To get the X alone. Yes, I'm confused. I don't know.
Okay, I think maybe I'm making it sound more complicated than it is. We want to do something with that -3. What's the opposite of minus?
Add 3.
Adding 3. I think I was trying to explain a little too much of why we're doing what we're doing. We're just still doing those opposite operations.
So that's still right. Okay. Yeah. So, and then it would be 4 plus 3. Well, I got to do the X. Wait, do I still bring the X over -2 down?
Yep, you bring it down, and then you do need to actually do the 4 plus 3 in a calculator.
7.
Okay. So now what's the next opposite? What do we do?
Times it. Is it 7? Oh, 7 times -2?
Mm-hmm. And when we do that opposite, it gets rid of the -2 underneath the x there. This is one of the times where it's just not great to write it on both sides because it makes it look really confusing.
-14.
Good. So now here's one more way that inequalities are different than equations. With an equation, we'd be good to go. It's -14. With an inequality, there is one special rule that if you multiply by a negative or divide by a negative, you have to flip the inequality sign. divide by a negative number, you need to flip the inequality sign.
Okay, so 3x minus 5. Is that what we just did? No.
We did 3x plus 1 greater than 15. We did that, but this one we divided by a positive 3. So this weird rule didn't ever come into play.
Okay.
But this time we multiplied by a negative 2. We actually have to change this now to be less than or equal to negative 14 for our answer to be correct. And it's something, again, you're going to have to remember without it being kind of written in or obvious. Just like, yeah, it's kind of like pulling it.
When it's nothing, usually when it's no symbol there, it will always be multiplication.
Yep, it's kind of like that one. When there's no symbol there, it's multiply, but they don't show it. You just have to know that. That's exactly correct.
So this next one, I have 3x minus 5. That's lesser than 7. I will put the line through the lesser than, and then I would do the opposite of minus is plus. So I would plus 5, or I would automatically minus it.
Nope, you do the opposite.
Okay. So 5, and then I put a 5 on the side of the 7.
Mm-hmm.
I would take that one out. I bring down the 3x.
Good.
Then 7 plus 5, 13.
Close.
I mean 12. I'm sorry.
12.
And bring that down. So it would be, let's see, 3x lesser than 12. So I would do 3 times 3, or 3 times 12.
Well, we know it's multiply, but we do the actual opposite. So even though we have to recognize this is multiply, what we actually do is divide.
Oh, divided by 3. Oh, I'm taking away the 3. Bringing the x down, taking away the 3. So it'll be 3 divided by 3. 12 divided by 3, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which would be 4.
Good.
So x equals negative 4. I mean, lesser than 4.
X is less than 4. This time don't flip because we didn't divide by a negative 3. If this was divide by negative 3, you flip. If not, we just leave it. You may have to recognize the graph though. So just one more graph practice.
And another,
So 4 is our main number. It was x less than 4. At the 4, should we put an open or a closed circle?
Closed.
Closed was when there was a line underneath.
No. I'm sorry, open circle.
Open. And then shade left or right.
Left.
Good.